How do I swipe? What does this do? Video mode only. I'm swiping things. Swipe is not working. Swipe. Ah, there we go. I'm still learning technology. What can I say? I feel old. Chapter 26 of the book of Proverbs. Starting in verse 6 today and down to verse 12, I color code all my Proverbs. And it's like there's some overlapping here, but I see basically just general commands about proverbial commands that we typically see down to verse 12. 13 to 16, I believe it has to do with money and work ethic. And then really 17 to 22 can be interpersonal relationships. But 20 on down, I think to the end, is all about watching your mouth. So it's kind of, there's chunks of sections here. And so verse 6 says, he who sends a message by the hand of a fool cuts off his own feet and drinks violence. So just make sure, if you're trying to convey a message, that you convey it by a reliable means. Might I say, perfect timing to say this, that if you have something of importance to tell someone, don't text. If you've ever thought about proposing via text, you're what the Bible calls a fool. But realistically, important messages we should get face to face. On the flip side, bad news. When you want to correct someone, when you want to say something that could upset them, text messaging is a real cheap way to do that. It's cheap because it's so easy for you, but very much so it can give across the wrong idea and the wrong meaning. So kind of taking verse 6 to a modern place, the idea of make sure you're using a reliable method and a good method for sending messages. Verse 7, like the legs of the lame that hang limp is a proverb in the mouth of fools. These proverbs are supposed to be wise sayings that help us do life. But fools, they don't take them in. They don't really care. They don't listen. You try and teach them, but they're just not going to hear it. Verse 8, like one who binds a stone in a sling is he who gives honor to a fool. Now, that's kind of funny. Do you get it? So giving honor to a fool is just stupid. You shouldn't give honor and position to a fool. And maybe that's like you become king and you appoint your friends instead of wise people, right? Well, a sling, it says bind it to a sling. So the idea is you drop a rock into the pouch of the sling, spin it around and let it loose. Well, if you go let loose and that rock is actually tied into the sling, it's going to whack yourself in the head. Anyway, okay, maybe I find that funnier than I should, but that's the idea here, right? Like a thorn that goes into the hand of a drunkard is a proverb in the mouth of fools. And here the idea again is that they don't even feel it. They're so drunk, they don't even notice that there's a thorn. And the idea of proverb, it's like they don't even realize that there's good instruction being shared with them. The great God, verse 10, who formed everything, gives the fool his hire and the transgressor his wages. As a dog returns to his own vomit, so a fool repeats his folly. Do you see a man wise in his own eyes? There's more hope for a fool than him. Now, this has all been building up. See, God gives the fool his hire and the transgressor his wages. Even God takes care of the fool. But a fool is like a dog returning to its own vomit. That's a beautiful picture, is it not? Just imagine that for a second. Ugh. A fool will do that. But notice this chapter started in verse 1 with talking about fools. All right, verse 1 mentions fools. Verse 3, verse 4, verse 5, verse 6, verse 7, verse 8, verse 9, verse 10, verse 11. Did verse 2 just not have it? Verse 2 almost does. It's the one verse that doesn't mention fools, but it's related. right? It's related to all of this. And it's actually verse 2. Okay, it's not related, but, it is related, but it doesn't have the word fool. But all of this builds us up and it climaxes. That's the idea here, is that these proverbs are all building upon each other, just emphasizing the foolishness of fools. But in verse 12, but do you see a man who's wise in his own eyes? A proud man. A man who is confident that he does not need the input of others, that he does not need help. Well, there's more hope for a fool than for him. There you go. So all of this building up is what it leads to right here. Now there's more hope for a fool who we've been saying all these negative things about than for someone who's filled with pride. They are unteachable. They don't need other people's information and input. They've got it all figured out. So, we're only 6 minutes, and I try and maybe go up to 10. So I'm going to go up to verse 16 today. But right there would have been a good stopping point. Just recognizing that we need to be dependent upon God. We need to remain teachable, excited to learn, excited to grow. We need to know that there's wisdom in having a multitude of counselors, having people who will speak into our lives. I like information. I like hearing stuff and learning. And quite often when I have situations, I run them by multiple people. In fact, I feel like I've upset people in the past because they thought, well, wasn't my advice good enough? Why did you have to go ask over here? And it's just because I like to just take it in. I just want to hear everyone's advice. And even if your advice was the best, maybe their advice will just maybe even show that your advice was better. But that's the idea, is I like to hear it. But a man who's wise in his own eyes, he's got it all figured out. Well, there's even more hope for a fool than for him. All right, the lazy man says, there's a lion in the road, a fierce lion in the streets. Excuses. Lazy people are full of excuses. Maybe I'll have to refer to some of these come Sunday night as we're in Philippians 2. You'll see why. As a door turns on its hinges, so a lazy man on his bed. Just in the basement. I'm going to roll over again. I'm going to roll over again and just get some sleep. That's the lazy man. They love sleep. The lazy man buries his head in the bowl and it wearies him, or hand, in the bowl, and wearies him to bring it back to his mouth. Oh, I love that one. I love that one. This guy's so lazy. He's like, oh, popcorn. I love popcorn. Oh, whoa. That's so much popcorn. That's heavy. I'm sorry, I'm acting it out. Maybe I'm having a good morning. But it's just this hilarious picture. He buries his hand in the bowl, but he's just so lazy he can't even lift his hand up to his mouth to feed himself with the food he just grabbed. Guys, little secret. God makes fun of lazy people. I hope that's not you. The lazy man is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who could answer sensibly. Now, do you see the tie now? Because verse 12 says, you see a man who's wise in his own eyes. Well, the lazy man is wiser in his own eyes. So you're seeing a tie here. That ultimately, pride is the root of both of these scenarios. They don't have to be the same. There are people wise in their own eyes who are not lazy. They're hard workers, but they're still fools. And they'd be better off just being a fool than being wise in their own eyes. But the lazy man, because obviously the lazy person is wise in their own eyes because what they see themselves doing, they think is okay. They think it's okay to slack off because in their own eyes, it's justified. They think it's okay to just, be a leech because in their own eyes, they're justified. So see, you're not going to find lazy people who actually don't have a root of pride in them. Because if they were humble, they would work hard. If they were humble, they would be contributing. They would be seeking counsel. They would be seeking growth, because a humble person acknowledges that they need to grow. A humble person acknowledges that faithful service is the natural response to what God has done for them. And so the lazy man is wise in his own eyes, just like the man in verse 12, whom verses 1 through 11 built up to. It's someone who thinks they've got it figured out. I don't need to do that. Why? Well, because I've got my own justification of why I don't need to wake up. I don't need to get a job. I don't need to work hard. I don't need to tough it out. I've seen people come up with all sorts of excuses, right? The lion in the road. Well, I got a job, but I'm going to quit the job because I've got my reasons. You're lazy. That's the idea. And so some people are struggling to find jobs, and there's other people who are quitting decent jobs because, well, they don't like to work hard. So again, it's the reality is that laziness, at the root of it, is a pride. This idea that they don't need to do stuff because they've got reasons that they've self-justified. Okay, so there's Proverbs all the way up to verse 16 of chapter 26. Tomorrow we will carry on. Who knows if we'll get the chapter done or not, but we'll keep plugging along and moving forward. God bless you guys, and I will see you guys tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. I'll see you here.